Hello there and welcome to Test Prep Abstract Reasoning. We are going to look through the different styles of abstract reasoning questions, how we think and approach them, and also then what techniques and tactics we can use to solve these questions, and the fact that you will be solving these questions very quickly. Usually got about 26 seconds per question to go through an abstract reasoning styled question. So without further ado, let's go through those now. The first style of question that we're going to go through is the alike question. So usually there's a bunch of questions, usually 3 frames of images where there'll be something similar about those 3 shapes or those 3 frames of images, and there'll be 5 multiple choice ones down the bottom where you'll have to choose what is similar about the top 3 and which one from the bottom matches that one. We'll look at those shortly. The next of the 5 will be where there is the same sort of thing, but there's only the 5 frames. All of them will have something similar about them, and one will be different. One will be the odd one out. So it's a very similar technique and approach to this type of question, and we'll look through those shortly as well. The next one is when we're trying to find which shape, when placed in a logical order, is the middle shape. So there's the 5, and there'll be some sort of pattern happening, and you'll be able to try and spot which is the middle one in the sequence. The 4th one we're going to look through is which shape is missing. So there'll be 5 frames of images, and we'll have to figure out there'll be one of those frames will be missing, and then there'll be 5 to choose from down the bottom, and we're going to choose which one would go in that missing space. And the last one is what I call a box or a relationship. So there'll be a box which will be made up of 4 parts, and one of those corners will be missing, and we're going to see what would go in that 4th quarter. So that being said, we're going to actually split these into 2 categories. We're going to look at some of these as what we call rule-based abstract reasoning questions, and the other one as pattern-based abstract reasoning questions. So what do I mean by rule-based? So the alike questions and the different questions, what we're doing is there's no change to the images. There has to be something exactly the same about these, or how about they have a common factor, and that's how we pick which ones are alike and which ones are different. The other 3 all require a pattern. So we're looking for a consistent change, like a thing's rotating or changing color, or is the shape changing its position. So it's looking for a constant change, and that's what we call patterns. So the last 3 are all about patterns. I will actually say the box relationship one is a little bit of both, but it's still classified as a pattern question. All right, so this is one of our first style, which says 3 of the shapes in the top row are alike in some way. Which one in the bottom is most like them. So we can see there's a range of things going on here, but some of the things we might want to start to consider looking at is color. So of course, everything here, you've got white squares, black squares. We might want to look at number, so the number of shapes we've got here. So that might be a strategy we've got here. So we count these, there's 4 black squares in this first frame, there's 4 black squares in the second frame, and there's 4 black squares in the third black frame. So that is a consistency. That's what we're going to call a rule. Maybe I should have written that in text, but that's okay. And we're going to see if we make a rule, it doesn't matter how you find it, but if you make a rule, then we're going to try and match that rule to one of the ones down the bottom. So we can see here, A has got 5 squares, B has got 5 squares, C has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 squares, D has got 5 squares, and E has 4 squares. So going on that rule, E matches the rule, and we'd be happy with that. Okay. Other rules we might look for is, are they touching, or are they all not touching, or do they make a particular shape? So there's all sorts of rules we could look for there. All right, let's have a look at the next one. So this is quite a fun thing. We can do a lot of things with shapes. One key thing we can do is count the edges, or you can count the corners. I don't mind whether you count edges or corners, or we can look at consistent shapes. So the shapes that appear. So one option is in shapes, as you can see, is there a consistent pattern of shapes? So if I look at this, what have we got? We've got a square that doesn't have a square that has a square. So it doesn't make a pattern there, or a rule. So it's not consistent. That's got a hexagon that doesn't have a hexagon, that does have a hexagon, but it still doesn't make a rule. So I can see that the shapes that appear, there's no consistency, there's no rule about that. Counting the edges, let's have a look. So the little one has 4, or the inside shape has 4, the outside shape has 6. Here they're both pentagons. The inside shape has 5, the outside shape has 5. Here the inside shape has 6, and the outside shape has 4. So things that we can look at when we're counting the edges, we can look at the total edges. We can look at the difference in edges, or is the inside shape always have more or less edges than the outside shape? So in this case, what have we got? We've got, that actually has a total of 10 sides, that has a total of 10 sides, and that has a total of 10 sides. So considering that is the same, that makes them all alike in some way. Let's see if there's any down the bottom. So here, depending on how you want to count a circle we count as no edges or 1, and a triangle is 3. So it's either 3 or 4, but either way, that's not being counted. Here we've got a lot. You can see there's probably, what's it, 9 sides, I think, and then 8 sides. That's way too many. Here we've got 3 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that is actually 10. That's really good. So I would potentially just go ahead and click C, but since we've got a good strategy, I'm just going to double check the other answers. We can see that D is the same as A, so it's not going to work. And here, what have we got? We have got 6 on the inside and even more on the outside, so it's not going to be E. So of course, 10 total sides. That will make that our answer. All right, let's have a look then at some more shapes. So this one, we're looking at the 5 sides, again, are alike in some way. Which one is different? So this is the different style of question. So it's very similar to the last one. We still have a rule-based component going on. And sometimes there's a very subtle change. So here we're looking at position or movement. Now, we're not really going for a movement because it's not a pattern. So it's more about position. And we can look at, well, they're all made up of sort of these 2 triangles. They're not split in half the same angle. So if you find something that's different, like that's going that direction, that's going that direction, it's, you know, you've got both directions happening. So there's no consistency there. So that doesn't count. We're not going to look at that. The thing is, if I look at the black 2, also the gray 2 squares are together, the gray 2 squares are together, they're together, but on the top, together on the bottom, and together on the top. So they're not all in the same position, but they look quite consistent. And then we've got one white square. However, I can see the white square here is closer to the center. The white square here is closer to the corner, closer to the corner, closer to the corner, and closer to the corner. That would make A the odd one out, being closer to the center rather than closer to the corner. Okay, let's have a look at another different question. So here we've got some shape again. Now, usually when you have lots and lots of shapes in a question, we are not looking for counting sides as just a rule of thumb, or I'd use that as a last resort if you can't find a strategy. So let's have a look here. You've got a square, a triangle, and a circle. And as I look inside, I can see we've got a square, a triangle, and a circle. So we've actually got matching shapes going on here. Also the same amount of shapes. So that's really cool. Let's have a look at the next one. So we've got a pentagon, a hexagon, and a septagon. Looks like 7-sided shape. So let's have a look. Pentagon, hexagon, and what appears to be a septagon there as well. We could come back and count those sides if we need to just double check and pair them up, but they look good enough from here. There's a triangle, there's a circle, there's a pentagon. So this looks like a really good strategy so far, considering we're seeing lots of consistency. All right, that's the same. That's the same. They're not the same. So D could be the odd one out. Let's just double check E. And of course, when you're doing a different one, you do need to double check them all because 4 of them have to be alike and you have one odd one out. Let's have a look here. Squares, triangles, and pentagons. So D is our odd one out. That being said, let's look at a new strategy. Let's get into the pattern questions. So here we've got a pattern question. We've got 5 of the shapes are placed in a logical order, which is in the middle. So that doesn't mean they're currently 1 through 5. We need to put them 1 through 5. Now, one thing that I want to just quickly look at is if we look at things from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but then I write that exact same pattern backwards from this end, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sometimes the start point and the end point, we're not sure which is the start and which is the end, but it doesn't really matter because you'll notice from either way we count it, the middle one is always the 3rd image. So that is part of a key component we want to think about when we're trying to find the middle. So I'm going to look here, that's got 1 triangle colored in. That looks like that's got 1, 2 triangles colored in. That's got all 5 triangles colored in. That's got 4 of the triangles colored in. And that has, looks like 3. So that is in quite a logical order, isn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That would make E our middle frame in the logical order. All right. And of course, you can see some other styles other than what we're going through today, but we're just going through some of the key things that you will see in an abstract reasoning test. or a logical reasoning test. All right, so here we're doing again, which one comes in the middle from the logical order. So there may not be a clear start. I like this one where there's just one little dot in the center. I'm going to think about that as a start. Now, if you go with the starting point, but then you can't figure out where to go from there, choose a new starting point and see if you can find it. And if that was our first one, maybe the second ring colored in would be our second point, which I can see over there is our second ring colored in. And if we're going to the third one colored in, that would be here. We can see now this one gets colored in a gray. So let's see what happens if we go, the black goes to the fourth ring. Let's see what would happen. So that would be there. We can see that gray one went out a ring as well. So it's kind of making this ring in ring in ring sort of approach here. And then the fifth one would be the gray or the black in the outside ring of the heart. So of course you could have counted that backwards, but again, E will be our answer because that is in the third position, in the middle position. Okay. And sometimes if you study these for long enough, you might find multiple patterns, but really you don't have enough time in the actual test. If you find a pattern and you find a nice sequence that you're going for, you need to click it and move on. An abstract reasoning test, you'll always have room to make a few errors because usually it's about speed and not about getting it perfectly correct the whole way through. All right, so our next style of question is the missing. So in the top row are shapes arranged in an order. So they are placed in a particular order and one shape is missing. So in this case, we're missing the fourth frame and we have to pick one from the bottom row to complete the pattern. So we can look at a few things. If I look at that center black space, what do we got? We've got like the squares normal, then it's turned on to its side like a diamond, then square. We maybe think that might go a diamond again and then a square. So when we're doing these ones, actually in a lot of your questions, elimination can be a good strategy. So let's eliminate the ones that aren't diamonds. So B is not, D is not. So it makes sense that we have either A, C, or E left. And many questions, we won't just go the one rule or the one technique or the one change. The questions we've done so far have just got one element, but some will have two things we have to spot or three things that we may have to spot. So here we can see there's other things going on inside of our pattern. So there's the little squares, the little gray square and the little white square. So if we look at the gray square, what's going on here? It's down in the bottom left corner, then in the top left corner, then in the top right corner. So we can feel like that's maybe going corner to corner in a clockwise direction. So where would be next? In the bottom right, and then it makes sense from the bottom right to move back to the bottom left, which it does. So we can imagine that that gray square should be in the bottom right corner, which it is for actually all A, B, C, and E. Sorry, A, C, and E. So sometimes actually another strategy you can use is looking at your answers and seeing what's different about them. And if we had a spotted that the gray square was the same about all of them, maybe we wouldn't have chosen that option. But that's okay. Let's then look at the white square. What is the white square doing? So it's top center, top right, right center. So it's kind of going middle, corner, middle. Would imagine the corner. So in that same position, and then it would move over to the bottom middle, which is true. So if it was in the bottom right corner, well, there it's in the bottom left, so that's not right. There it's in the bottom middle, so that's not right. But here it's not there at all. Now, depending on your test, sometimes shapes can hide behind other shapes and sometimes they can't. And things like the police test or anything that ASA makes, ASA will make tests where shapes can hide. So do look out for that. In this case, if you were to overlay a gray or square and maybe a transparent square or a white square, one may hide behind the other. And we know that they're both supposed to be in that bottom right position, which makes A the correct answer. Let's clear the board. And let's have a look at the next question. All right, so here we've got another missing frame or missing part of the pattern. So here we're missing the third frame. So let's have a look at what's going on. There's a lot happening here. Stand back, see if there's anything that jumps out from you. We've got color, remember, that we can look at. We've got the shapes. So what's happening with all the different shapes? We might have movement. Is anything change or position? So is anything changing position or changing its location? So what do you spot first? And even on this video, feel free to pause it or go back to the other ones, pause it before I explained it and see if you can spot it before I've explained the answers. All right, so for me, color is usually something that spots out and I can just see the black and I can see, well, that's on that diagonal, that's on that diagonal, that's on that diagonal, and that's on that diagonal. So I'm feeling if it goes up and then down and then maybe up again and then down and up, that could be a color thing with the black. So that's going up, and that's going up. So I'm going to come in here and just eliminate B and D. Now, if I can't get a strategy, a full answer on this strategy, I'd have to go back to the start and try again. But that's okay. Let's see what we can find else now. So we've done color. Let's look at position of the shapes, all the different shapes. So we've got a donut in the top left, donut in the bottom right. And I'm just going to focus on the one. I don't know where it's going to go. Donut in the bottom right, donut in the top left. So it seems to sort of alternate. So I think if the donut was in the top left, that would make sense. So that's in a good position. That's not. That's not. So that takes us to A. So that actually could just be our answer, that being said. So that to me, I'd probably pick A and not do any further, but you could look through. Why don't you take a moment now? Let's see if you can spot any other patterns that are going here. I can guarantee there are a few more things happening in here, but we have enough to be able to pick A just using elimination of a couple of different pattern techniques. Okay, we skip through. There we are. So this is the last style, or the fifth style of this abstract reasoning test structure. And it's what I like to call the box structure. So it says here, there is one shape missing in the pattern on the top, and which shape from the bottom row best completes the pattern. So we can think about this as a relationship or an association type question, where there will be an association maybe between the top two, and whatever happened, whatever change took place between the top left and the top right, we could apply the same association or rule or pattern from the bottom left to the bottom right. That being said, you could also do the same thing from top to bottom, so long as you are consistent. So I'm going to see, look, that one down there, I can see that's kind of a mirror image just flipping down. So if we did a mirror image just flipping down as well, we could see that that triangle is currently facing that way. That triangle would need to go down, and that's where the white dot is, which that's in the right place. That's in the right place. And that only does 2. And that actually highlighted another technique. So that was mirror image or reflection, if you want to call it that. So that can be a technique that you can use. All right, so that gave us 2 answers. Now, if we've moved that down, if we think about a mirror image, and this one does it, the gray dot stays closer and the black dot is staying further away. So we're not changing color or anything like that. It's just a pure mirror image, which means the black dot will be closer and the gray dot will be further down, which gives us E. Okay, let's look through. So we've got one last question to look at for this analysis of the abstract reasoning. Let's look through here. So I think the changes from there to there are not obvious, but the changes across seem to be quite obvious. So let's try apply across in this particular set of frames. So across we can see again, it seems like there's some form of mirror image reflection happening between the bottom 2, and the arrow is also changing color. So you can imagine at the top, we're going to apply the same 2 steps. We've got the reflection and we've got the color change. So let's have a look here. So we want to have a big circle with an arrow in it, which they all do. The arrow will be from the center point, pointing out. Oh, that was a great looking arrow. And would imagine that it's going to be clear or colored white, however you want to perceive that. So let's see, C looks like that follows our pattern. All right, so if you have any questions about the abstract reasoning, you can always follow the links down below. You can find us here at TestPrep. We have tests. We offer one-to-one tuition as well. So anything you'd like, feel free to message, or if you have questions about anything that you've been working on, feel free to put questions down below. And we do have free tests on our website as well. So you can get one full abstract reasoning test for free at testprep.com.au. If you want to see what other videos are coming up, do click the bell, do subscribe to this video. Thanks for watching all the way through, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Take care.